Welcome back to Fortified Lessons on Love and Divorce, hosted by Toomey Family Law. I'm Letitia Braving. Today we are joined by Kristine Young, a successful Sunshine Coast restaurant owner and entrepreneur, author and inspirational leader. Kristine is also heavily involved in a range of domestic violence charities and causes, including SunnyKids and Risetwo, helping people restart in a safe environment. Her passion for advocating for these issues stems from her own journey, having survived and thrived through adversity. Carving her own path after a devastating divorce, Kristine became successful in her own right and now wants to give women hope and inspire change. Welcome, Kristine, and of course, welcome Lisa Toomey.
Thank you, Letitia. We're pleased to be here, aren't we?
Thank you so much.
So, Kristine, tell us a little bit, because you're a very successful businesswoman here on the Sunshine Coast. You run a very well-known restaurant. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll sort of jump back into the marriage and what got you to where you are now.
Yep. So currently I'm the director of Bella Venezia restaurant, and I've been the director for 7.5 years now. So in 2015, I purchased the business, and it's a 7-day business, and we run 364 days of the year. We're open, and we currently have over 50 staff, and it's a massive business. So it definitely keeps us busy, and we currently doing over 80,000 customers a year. So it's a huge amount of covers that we do. And also a little bit about background about myself is previously I was working in the media marketing industry. So I've been in that sort of industry for the last 25 years. So
Yeah, so you've had a big journey to get where you are today.
Yeah, definitely. And previously business owner as well. So I sort of understand, how a business runs. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that being an entrepreneur and having your own business isn't as glamorous as it comes across to many people. Tell us a little bit about the journey before you bought the restaurant, because I know as I said in the lead-in, it hasn't been an easy journey for you, and that your previous marriage, I guess, to be able to survive that and come out to where you are now as a successful businesswoman is really inspiring. Tell me a little bit about your marriage.
So I was married for 13 years. We were together for 17. And during that time, we had a successful business together. There was a lot going on for me personally and with the business as well, juggling a lot with kids and relationship, and it was a really, really stressful time, I guess, is a good word for it. And I think coming out of that relationship, it was just like, it was so exhausting. So I really wanted to really find myself again and put my energy into something positive and to make it my own. So that's why, for me, coming out of it, it was a very stressful time, and Lisa was extremely helpful with that. And so what I did was I wanted to focus my energy on my future and not look back into the past.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And look, I don't think anybody comes through divorce unscathed, even if it is amicable. I think it is just a very emotionally charged time. In your instance, you had a business with your then husband. Did that make the divorce more of a complicated, complex process? I know, Lisa, you handled Kristine's case, so I'll get your feedback as well. But for you, Kristine, what was it like having that business and then going through the divorce? It wasn't a straightforward process.
No, it was really challenging because it was so complicated. I had the company structure and then obviously just the regular part of it, which is the divorce. Just with the whole, the backwards and forwards and, the mediation process and, I think we went to the Supreme Court. There was a lot involved, and it was a really, really stressful time. And, Lisa really helped me and gave me the strength and the courage and the information and the knowledge that I needed to really get through it. Yeah, so she was incredible.
Lisa, from your perspective as a lawyer, what was it like, this case, in terms of the complexities? Obviously, you deal with complicated matters like this. What's your sort of take on it?
Look, there was a lot to get behind, and there was a lot of digging that had to be done. There was a lot of work by way of the background material that we had to pull together to really understand what was going on. A lot of that information, or some of that information, it wasn't a lot of the information, but some of that information Chris was just not privy to. So we really had to rely on all the processes that the family court rules provide us in relation to discovery and valuation to try and actually get to the bottom of what was going on in the whole business. It was a pretty complicated procedure because it was an online business, and that became really complicated because it's not a tangible. Being online is a very, very different setup, and it's movable. It's a moving feast all the time. Where you've got bricks and mortar, you're fairly secure about, well, nothing can happen to that, but that's an entirely different story. Wouldn't you say that, Chris?
Yeah,
it's an
correct.
entirely different story when it's on the net. Because you just have no control over how it's working. Yeah. So
I mean, that's an interesting point, because so many people these days do have online businesses, even if it's a sideline hustle. Kristine, what was the learning through that for you?
Well, I guess, I was, I had a figure in my mind of what the valuation should have been. And then obviously when the valuation came in, it was a completely different figure. And I guess, the whole learning process for me was massive. Yeah, it was like climbing Mount Everest. And when we got to the top, we realised, there was only so much we could do and control, and then it was up to the legal system. Like Lisa said, there's a lot of work involved in getting to that point. And when we reached that point, it was just like incredible to go through, just life-changing. Like it really was life-changing, the learning curve for me.
I was just going to add that it is really difficult with online businesses. It is, as Chris pointed out, she had a figure in her head about what the business ought to have been worth, but it's so easy to manipulate an online business that really was the most significant struggle. And I don't know how one can really protect themselves from that type of business structure with respect to trying to not or keep everything in situ at least so that it has a value. So that was really tough, wasn't it? Because we then had to look at what the historicals were in the business and then look at what they are now. And then we had to mount an argument about, there's been a wastage arguments, something's really gone wrong. And it happens. People separate, and all of a sudden a very buoyant, good business all of a sudden becomes a business that really doesn't have much of a value.
So let's just take a little bit of a step back for someone who might be listening to this and be in a similar situation, like they co-own a business with their partner or an ex-partner. What is the normal process in this? Because you can have the evaluation of a business, but if you don't agree with that evaluation, what options do you have at that point?
Well, our system is set up so that it must be what we call a joint single valuer. So there's no argument about the valuation. But of course, you can, if you oppose a valuation, you're entitled to ask questions about how the valuer came to the value they did. And then if you're still not satisfied, you actually have to make an application to court seeking what we call a shadow expert appointment, so that your expert can come in and be part of the litigation and raise their view about why the joint single expert valuation is incorrect. It's very hard to get a shadow expert on board or consented to by the court. You've got to have a really, really good reason. But the process in relation to valuing businesses is not that difficult on the basis that it's a forensic approach. So it's not like using a business broker value. So, but I think the problem with online businesses is that your customer base can move really easily and can move really quickly, and it's almost overnight. That's really telling. And your competitors can open up with the exact same concept, but just rebadge it under another name, and you can't control that. So they're all the things that I think are very risky for people who think there may be a value in their online business.
Is there anything anyone can do in that situation to protect themselves if they're going into a separation, or is it just the nature of the beast in the industry?
I would think that by way of protection, it's about being armed with information. Wouldn't you agree, Chris?
Definitely.
Really understanding what is your customer base, what's your client data, what is having the information available and stored somewhere so you can do the comparatives. That's all very, very important.
Yeah.
I can imagine, though, that if you're in a marriage and you're in a business with your partner, you're not probably necessarily wanting to double up on some of those items of work, and there is a huge amount of trust because they're your partner, they're your husband. Yeah. At what point at what point for you did you realize that, hold on, maybe I need to find out more about what's happening? Did you entrust everything to him, and was that opening you up to be a little bit more vulnerable than what you wish you had have been in going into a separation?
Yeah, it was a little bit more complicated because there was other business partners as well. So it did become quite, a complicated matter as such. But basically there was a certain amount of trust, yes, involved in trusting everyone involved. But to be fair, I think it wasn't until I'd reached the stage where I was ready to leave the marriage that I started to become, untrusting of what was actually happening. And at that point I'd already separated. So in hindsight, yes, it would have been great to maybe gather a little bit more information up personally. But to do with the business, I pretty much stepped away from the marriage in the full knowledge that I may or may not, unfortunately, even though every part of that business should have been a marriage asset, because it all goes into the marriage pool, all the assets. Unfortunately, because I stepped away from that, I was prepared then, that I may or may not see any financial, reward for that work that I had done in setting up that company.
That must have been a huge shock.
Yeah, that was financially very, very difficult to deal with. But at the same time, I was going through a lot of personal trauma, and it was a very traumatic time for me and the family. And for me, I was just in survival mode at that point. So to me, Lisa helped me gain that strength, to get through, because it was a very, very challenging time, difficult time.
I think Chris looked at it. Anything she got out of it was going to be a bonus, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And because I realistically because I had survived, I felt as though, I had Lisa on my side. So she was going to help me, start to rebuild my life after that, which is exactly what happened. And, as difficult as it was to go through and gut-wrenching and, it was really tough. It was probably one of the most defining moments in my life because it really, really made me who I am today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that this is still an emotional topic for you. What does it bring back? Like in terms of, was there you said a defining moment. What was that lesson? What was that defining point?
I think it was just the fact that, you just think it's going to be forever. When you get married, you think it's, this is how you imagine and picture your life. You have this, you have this vision of how it's going to turn out, but it doesn't always turn out that way. And by the time the marriage had broken down, I'd well and truly left the relationship, like mentally. My heart was still there, but my mind was somewhere else. I was moving forward with my life. I was trying to remove myself from that relationship. It took me a good 18 months to leave because I was so scared of what was going to happen if I left. So afraid of my safety and the safety of my kids. So for me, it was just going through that process of have that heart and head conversation that were continually, butting heads about, should you stay, should you leave, should you stay, should you leave. It's that continual, conversation that women have when they're in a relationship, that they're trying to do everything they can to make it work, but in the end it's just too hard and too difficult and too dangerous as well with, there was a lot going on for me. I didn't realise I was in a domestic violent relationship. I didn't realise that until I'd left. So there was a lot going on with me with counselling. I was trying to deal with, the psychology of it was that I was staying because I was trapped in that cycle of abuse. And until you actually know that you're trapped, it's a scary place to be. And then once you break free of that and you look back, you think, how could I have ever been put myself in that situation? So I guess for a lot of women, there's a lot of warning signs. There's a lot of intuition. There's a lot of anxiety that goes along with being in a toxic relationship. But it's not until you actually recognize all of those signs and symptoms and remove yourself from that you can look back and go, okay, now I understand why I stayed for so long. Yeah.
You hear that a lot. We've had people on this couch who've said very similar things. And it's nearly a process of unlearning and then relearning. Was there a particular one moment where you went, where the penny dropped, where you realised the situation you were in and thought, right?
So we went to marriage counselling, and the entire time was talking about my ex-partner and his problems and his issues and what it was like for him. And then towards the end, the counsellor came up to me and said, "Are you okay?" And then he was just like looking at me like it was all my problem, like rolled his eyes at me because, So I guess for me it was that realization that this is never going to change. He was never going to be open-minded to the fact that there was anything wrong with him in this marriage. It was always my fault. It was everything that I was doing was to blame. And so I had to take responsibility for myself, and I had to realize that this is my life and I can't have anybody else control it. I've got to control it myself. So that's when I took back control of my life. And with Lisa's help and her guidance and she gave me the courage to do that. So I'll be forever grateful.
That must have been a really empowering moment when you made that choice. And Lisa, I'm guessing from the position that you sit, not only with Kristine, but I'm sure many other people as well, that even if the writing is on the wall for you and you can see potentially what's going on, I'm guessing you probably have to respect people's journey and where they're at and just guide them very carefully during that identification process, shall we call it?
Oh, look, absolutely. I mean, it was the first time that Chris had ever been through anything like it. So she was really relying heavily on me to make sure that she understood the process, she understood the pitfalls, the advantages, the disadvantages. So there was a whole education for Chris in understanding how family law works. And it had to be a slow process because with Chris's matter, everything was just seemed to be happening so quickly, which, didn't help matters. But got there. Got there in the end, which was great. And I think the most rewarding day for me was when it had all settled. Chris came back into the office and said, I'm so relieved that's over and I can now live my life. And that was enough for me. That was like, yeah, you know what? Yes, that's true. You can now live your life. Mm-hmm. And that was really empowering for me because that was her outcome.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it wasn't so much, as you said, Kristine, it wasn't you were prepared to walk away with nothing, but it wasn't nothing because you would have been regaining a whole new start to life.
Correct. And a whole new appreciation of what it is, to be happy and to be healthy and to not have any panic attacks or anxiety or stress or worry or fear anymore. I wasn't afraid anymore. Yeah. And I'm still not. And, 10 years later and I've never been happier. I'm in a healthy relationship now.
Married? Remarried?
Very, very happy. And, I've got loyalty, respect, trust, all those values that you want to have in a great relationship. And, yeah, I'm truly grateful for the journey that I went through because I wouldn't have it if I didn't go through that process.
Exactly.
And that greater appreciation of what it is to be truly happy. Yeah.
But Chris is really entrepreneurial because you are entrepreneurial because she'd been through all of this trauma with this separation and then all of a sudden, it kind of clicked over. She clicked over and then I could see the real entrepreneurial Kristine come out because we were just having a general chat. Remember that? We were having a general chat and she was saying, oh, look, I think I want to buy this restaurant. And I've gone, why not? Why not? You need it's a new lease on life. It's a fresh start. It's something entirely you can do. And she's never looked back.
Yeah.
Never look back. It's just been an amazing journey, hasn't it? With the
it's
restaurant
been incredible.
And,
so I really wanted
successful?
I really wanted to throw myself into a project, and I just put all of my passion of wine and food because I had that experience with wine, and food and travel into the most incredible restaurant. And look, it already had incredible history and bones, being on the coast since 1983. And I saw a fantastic opportunity. So grabbed the opportunity. Lisa was supportive and basically haven't looked back within, 7 years. It's grown by 2,000% in value.
Wow.
Since I purchased it. And it's a phenomenal business and, so it's living the dream, really.
You mentioned before that you wouldn't be the businesswoman you are today had it not been the experience of a divorce. How did it make you a better businesswoman?
Just with more knowledge and understanding and life experience, because business is not just about numbers, it's about people. It's about the customer journey and the customer experience and understanding the psyche behind why we do what we do every day. So there's so much more involved in business than just, than just the average transaction. So for me, and having a big marketing background, for me it was really important about rebranding the visual side of it as well as the customer experience journey side of it. So I really wanted to take it to the next level, which we've managed to do. So yeah, more and during that COVID period was a real transformational time where we really wanted to bring a 5-star luxury restaurant to Mooloolaba because we couldn't travel anywhere or
Pretty
go
gutsy,
anywhere.
don't you think?
Oh,
during COVID, to make
100%.
that decision, right?
Yeah.
When people were
But,
shutting
there's
down.
always an element of risk with any business decision you do. But there's, that courage and that bravery definitely came through from my divorce.
And I'm guessing it wasn't just rebranding the restaurant, it was rebranding you.
Correct.
Tell me about that.
So it was a new version of Kristine. So during the whole process of my divorce, I put everything into a written journal, which turned into my book, so my guide. So I wrote everything down, and this was just initially a guide for myself, just to refer back to is what do I do here, what do I do there, because at the time I was getting a lot of counselling and information. And I thought this could be useful for someone. I thought this could actually help someone going through the same thing as me, and there's not one book or resource where you could actually refer to everything, including the help. Yeah. So everything I put into that, so I put a lot of positivity and optimism into that journey because at the end of it, all of the difficulty that we went through, that I went through, after the divorce, it turned into my biggest strength, and that was being able to be my true authentic self and be happy with who I was, and also give me the courage and the self-belief, because the self-belief for me was a huge one, especially after so long feeling like I wasn't good enough and I was to blame. And, so for me it was like I finally felt like I was my true self again. Yeah, so that was part of the journey as well, the breaking down and then the rebuild.
Aren't you on your second print of that book?
So this one it became an international award finalist. So it basically won an international award for women's health.
Oh, nice.
Because I submitted it thinking, I've got no chance. But, yeah, because of all of the information in there, there's a lot of psychology in there as well, which has had input from my psychologist, which talks about our thoughts and how important our thoughts are in a marriage, and just about our self-beliefs and our values and, and who you truly want to be as a person, and not what the other person thinks you are, but what you think you are.
Yeah, 100%.
Of you, yeah.
And I definitely want to come back to some of the points in the book. But firstly, so I wanted to ask you, when you sit beside Kristine now and you see this version of her, how does that make you feel?
Great. Going back 10 years ago when we first met, I had some genuine concerns for Kristine. I just didn't know if she was going to get through it because it was so tough. And she was broken. That marriage had broken her. That relationship had broken her. And she really needed to pick herself up and just pull herself together, because as I always say to my clients, I need you to be strong. I need you to understand what's going on. I need you to give me instructions. I need you to understand what I'm talking about, because I can't move forward unless you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and look, I know this is something we've talked about before, but it's really important. The mental health of your clients is really important. What do you do in those situations where, as you say, they are broken?
Well, Chris was already getting some counselling. She was getting in therapy at the time. So that really, that was great.
And
that
Scope
really
were
good.
helpful too.
Scope was amazing. So Scope is a domestic violence facility that's connected to the Richard Orr Magistrates Court, and they assist domestic violence victims. And so they're really switched on about how to assist victims in those scenarios in relation to making applications for domestic violence orders and those sorts of things. But they've also got an offshoot in relation to counselling, and you know, they're a very well regarded facility here on the Sunshine Coast. But you know, I think when you ask the question, well, Chris, you're a different person. You know, that 10 years or, you know, 8 to 10 years, that's just been an amazing journey for you, because you're just a different person. You know.
I'm a survivor.
You are a survivor. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And look at what you've done. I mean, you know.
And I've just been motivated to help others now. So for me, you know, motivated to be successful, because I feel like that has been my ultimate happiness for myself. And, you know, and I thought, well, if I can do it, you know, I can do it. I can prove everyone wrong, you know. And the thing is, there's lots of judgments. There's lots of, you know, stuff that happens to you from people from your past that go, oh, you know, thinking that the old business was all my ex-partner, but in actual fact, I had a lot to do with it, you know. And so stepping into my own business has been phenomenal for me, because it's actually proved that I can achieve anything myself.
Well, it showcased her talent.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
And I also have an amazing husband too, who is a massive supporter. And I couldn't have done it without him either, because he's supported me, you know, and my dreams and my goals and my visions to make it all come true. Yeah.
What is your number one advice for women who might be going through a similar situation like you went through?
Well, there's so much advice. Be honest with yourself. Back yourself. Get legal advice. Ask Lisa. Keep yourself safe. Understand, you know, that if things go pear-shaped, try and be 1 or 2 steps ahead, so you can predict if that's going to happen, you know, where you need to be to keep yourself safe and your children safe, because that's hugely important. But also communicate with the people around you, your loved ones. Tell them the truth. Tell them what's actually going on, you know. But for me, the big one is just be honest with yourself. If it's not working, it's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. Just move on from that mistake and learn from that mistake. So that's really, really important.
Given how much you've grown as a person, I know you're calling it a mistake, but it's made you who you are.
Yeah.
So isn't that's really inspiring, you know, to be able to reframe that?
I mean, I feel as though in an odd way the divorce was a blessing, because it taught me so much about myself, and it made me stronger, more determined to succeed. And I guess the ability to inspire others is what motivates me the most, and to make them realise no matter how bad and how difficult their life or situation is, there is always a way out of it, no matter how difficult, because I've seen it all. I've been there. What
Was there a particular thought or thing that you focused on your darkest days that got you through? Like, was there one?
Yeah, my German grandmother, she went through 2 world wars in Germany. She moved to Australia, couldn't speak English, completely moved away from her family. I mean, she's the strongest woman that I ever knew, incredibly strong. So I always drew from her strength and what she went through. And I guess a lot of inner strength comes from my mother as well. My mum's very strong and very determined, and she's like my rock. So I gained a lot of strength from her as well. But I think from a female leader perspective, I think women always empower women. So it's important that we share our knowledge, we look after each other, and we support each other. And that, to me, is the most important thing. Yeah.
And that's clearly what you've done with your book and the work that you do with the other charities and causes.
That's right. And now that I'm sharing my story, I'm giving other people the knowledge and also the ability to look at their own life and go, wow, I didn't realize that she'd been through that. You know, I'd been through that, and just being honest about it and saying it's okay, we're all human. You know, nobody has a perfect life, you know, and just to be able to help other women and empower other women to know that anything is possible and that they can get through it and they can achieve amazing success in their life. Yeah, just by self-belief.
Because I can imagine, you know, we put so much pressure on ourselves, and I can't speak for men, but as a woman, I know I put pressure on myself. You know, from a child, we have this idea of what our life will be. If you're career orientated, I'll do the career, I'll do the kids, I'll do the marriage. And, you know, then life doesn't turn out like that. And you go, I've failed. But there is a moment that you're talking about where you realized, hey, I've got a choice to not be a victim here.
That's right.
Take my power back and become not just a survivor, you're a thriver, and have a better life than you probably ever imagined by the sounds of it. It sounds like you're super happy.
Yeah, I'm really, really happy. And like you said, I've never been a victim. I've always been a survivor, because I will never get into that victim mentality, which is very much about, you know, feeling sorry for myself and, you know, the whole woe is me. That is not who I am. I'm about taking responsibility for myself and, you know, taking it, like the lessons that I've learned over all of that time for me was, it was the journey. It's part of life. And, you know, everyone goes through difficult times in their life. And I, you know, in a way, I'm grateful for that journey. I'm grateful for that difficult time because it's made me into a better person, and I guess a more compassionate, understanding, and understanding of what women go through.
When you're in it, it's hard to imagine that there's going to be an end. Isn't that right, Chris? Yeah. Like your matter unfortunately dragged on for quite a bit, and that was really sad for Chris because she had to live it for quite a long time. Regardless of what we tried to do to try and bring it to an end. So there was this endurance she had to go through during that whole process. And I remember we'd have conversations and I keep saying to her, but you know, once it's done, a year on from there, you won't know yourself. You won't know yourself. You just got to hang in there. You just got to hang in there. And that's that's kind of the mantra that I try to talk to my clients about, because when they're in it, they just cannot see the wood for the trees. You know, it's this is the way my life is going. This is the way I'm going to feel all the time. But you don't, do you, Chris?
No, it's so true. Like Lisa was like coaching me. She was like in my corner. She was like, come on, you've got this. You've got this. She was encouraging me. She was giving me so much knowledge. And the knowledge is the power. If you've got the knowledge and that understanding, you've got the power and the strength to keep going and that determination. But yeah, during that time, you're going through the day-to-day processes. It can be exhausting and draining. So it's really important that you look after your health, you eat well, you exercise, you do all of the basic things that we know we need to do when we're going through a crisis. And then when we come out the other side, we look back and go, how did we get through that? You know, how did we do that? How did we survive that? And credit to Lisa, you know, she was always there for me, and she also always supported me, you know, at that time. And it's been an incredible journey. So yeah,
Lisa, Kristine's talking about the fatigue of what these matters are like. What about for you as a lawyer? Because you're not just dealing with Kristine, you're dealing with, you know, potentially more cases like Kristine's. How do you manage your own fatigue and burnout?
Yeah, good question. I just think as you get older, working in this area of law, you tend to, you've got your safeguards and you tend to compartmentalise a bit. So, and, you know, as Chris says, you've just got to, like everyone, look after yourself. So, you know, have your you know, eat well, exercise, have your distractions, because it can eat you up. And I've seen it happen to family lawyers. I have seen family lawyers fall off the rails because it has become all encompassing for them and they've had nothing to look forward to except, you know, you are getting all this negative energy all day from people. So you've got to learn how to deal with that and how to cope with that. And I think, you know, it's particular personalities deal with it a lot better than other personalities. So, but as Chris says, it's about a bit of self-belief as well, right? So you've got to be there and you've got to be available for your client who's relying on you. And if you are not there and you can't be there, do them a favour and don't continue to act for them. You know, because they're relying on you and everything you do to get them through this. They're your responsibility. So you've just got to be cautious.
That's a huge responsibility. I mean, it sounds like you play a really pivotal role in someone's life when they're going through something like this.
Yep, you can. Absolutely, you can, because, you know, they've never been through it before, and they're looking at you, you know, and sometimes as lawyers we don't have all the answers, but we try and manage it as best we can. Yeah. What did you think of the mediation process, Chris? How did you know how we went to mediation? What did you think of that?
It was tough, you know, because you're pretty much trying to work out your whole life in one day, you know, of your breakup of assets and your backwards and forwards. And it's tough because you want to make the call to move on. But at the same time, you know, you don't want to rush into making any decisions that you might regret. So the mediation process is really it's a tough one.
It's a bit of a pressure cooker, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally
I think
a
so
pressure
too.
cooker.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah.
Did you come away with the result at the end of that mediation? Or?
Yeah, we did, but that was after a long time prior to that. I think it was 18 months before that we'd gotten to that point.
Was it the mediation that was able to wrap it up? Like, had you not gone to mediation, Lisa, do you think they would have still been at it? But like, was it the mediation, that process that helped?
Look, I think that's right. I think the mediation really drew it to a close because it had to come to a close. It was just spinning wheels. What I say is spinning wheels. Some matters just, you know, just don't move forward. And but, you know, the mediation was, I've got to say, was a good dispute resolution process to be able to bring it to an end.
Yeah, that's right. It was closure.
Yeah, it was closure. That's right. Yeah.
And we had a lot of toing and froing prior to that. So it was good to have closure in the end. And no, I was grateful.
Yeah. Lisa, for somebody who is in a co-owned business situation going through a separation, what would your I don't know, top tips be for someone in that situation?
Don't take your eye off the ball. Understand your business and continue to understand your business. And even if things are getting hectic and you're thinking it's just easier if I let someone else to deal with it, don't do it. Don't do it, because once you lose the fundamentals of understanding your business, then you're expecting, and you separate, then you're expecting someone like your family lawyer to try and pull it all back together again. And you know, as good as what we like to think we are, we're starting from zero as well. So my fundamental tip is don't take your eye off the ball when you're running a business.
Yeah.
Be involved and stay involved.
Anything you wanted to add to that, Chris?
Yeah, just be across everything. Be across all the figures.
Yep.
You know, just keep copies of everything and just be aware of everything that's going on behind the scenes. Like Lisa said, the more information that you've got going into a divorce on your business, the better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned a couple of times, and Lisa's mentioned, you've remarried.
Yes.
How was it going into a second marriage, having had the experience that you did?
Well, we were together for 5 years before we got married, so that was a good time, for us to really understand, if this is what we both wanted. So it was a great relationship from the beginning, and, very similar in personality, very driven, very focused on what we wanted, and very, he's my best friend. So he's always just so incredibly supportive of me and what I wanted to do and my dreams and goals. So, yeah.
Did it make you more cautious financially?
Yeah, definitely. 100%. I think that goes without saying.
Do you have any final bits of advice for someone who might be going through not just a complicated divorce where there might be businesses and other situations involved, but in general, like what was one thing that you wish you had have known going into your separation?
I would have done it sooner. I wouldn't have been in denial about it. I wouldn't have been living this pretend reality that everything was okay when it clearly wasn't. So I think life is too short, and now that I've come out the other side and realised that life is too short to be unhappy, and happiness starts with yourself, and you have to be brave and strong enough and honest with yourself enough to say, you've got to do this for yourself, because it's your life too, and your life matters, and you're important, and your happiness is important. And at the end of the day, it's all about happiness. So just be happy and go out and live your life.
Chris, is your book still online?
Yes, so you can purchase this online through retailers.
Give it a plug. What's the name?
Give it a plug, yeah.
The Self-Preservation Guide. So it's a guide on how to leave a toxic relationship and change your life. So it's got all the information and tools, and to understand what is a toxic relationship to start with, what is gaslighting, what is narcissistic personality disorder, what are all of the signs and the warning signs to look out for, and how to remove yourself safely from that relationship. All the tools and resources are in there, all of the support that you need. So you can purchase online. You just have to Google the Self-Preservation Guide, and it is available on all major retailers online as well. So, and it's an audiobook as well. So if you prefer audiobooks, we've got that as well.
And we should mention your author name on this is Kristine
Ruth.
So if you're looking for that, make sure you keep an eye out for
Yes, that's my author's name.
Is there another book? Is there another book coming out?
Well, I'm working on it at the moment. So keep in mind healthy boundaries. So just looking at the future, and we're going to be having conversations around what is a healthy boundary in the workplace, at home, with the relationship, but most importantly, what's a healthy boundary with yourself?
Yeah, and I liked something you said earlier where you were saying that, and I'm a firm believer in this as well, business is personal. You're dealing with people, in your instance, customers, staff, potentially other business partners, and just people in general. And I think a book like that, talking about boundaries, particularly if you've come out of situations where there is domestic violence or some form of trauma, is a really, really positive thing that more people need to be talking about. So I look forward to reading that one.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Was there anything else you'd like to add, ladies?
Oh, I don't think so. I think we've done quite well, don't you?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me. And
well, we thank you, Chris, for coming along and telling your story. We know that when people sit on this couch, it's not easy because, we do kind of dredge up what happened in the past, and you've got to kind of relive that a little bit to talk to us about it. So it was tremendous that you agreed to do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing your experience and being vulnerable with us. And Lisa, pleasure as always for your expertise and your empathy.
Thank you, Letitia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Follow Toomey Family Law on LinkedIn, Facebook and YouTube for more practical family law support.